Let's get peppy. I am Chaz the Joe from Planet America, a TV show on ABC News. I'm getting better at this.
Yeah, and I'm David Smith from the University of Sydney.
By the end of this year, I'm going to do a semi-professional introduction, at least once.
Okay.
At least once. That's my aim.
That's good. Speaking of semi-professional, to the people who are watching this in Ultra HD or whatever it is on the on the YouTube page, I'm sorry for my slightly unprofessional appearance, and please don't be alarmed by this wound on my forehead. It is not a demented act of Harry Potter fandom. It occurred because I think it was on Tuesday. I'd left my bathroom door open at an awkward angle and walked straight into it in the middle of the night.
Were you walking ahead? Were you looking ahead when you walked into the door? Like that's the kind of thing you'd see, a door.
I don't have a very clear memory of the event.
You must have been distracted.
Well, anyway, it was a very superficial cut. Yeah. Like it wasn't a real head. Like, if you've ever seen a real head cut before, and if you've got kids, you've almost certainly seen a real head cut. Like, it just bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. But this was very superficial. So I'm like, oh yeah, fine, no problem. But then I went to bed. I'm like, what if I'm concussed? I should not be going to sleep. And I was trying to give myself an NRL head injury assessment by asking myself who the Prime Minister was, what the date was. But then I'm like, no, I can't really do this myself. And then, maybe this indicates I was concussed. I'm like, I think what I should do is Google which part of the skull is thickest. Because if I hit a really thick part of the skull, then this isn't going to matter.
Well, you hit the part which you head with when you're playing soccer.
Well, this was the thing. So I couldn't get any information that was intelligible to me at all about the thickness of skull. I mean, there's a lot of phrenology bullshit, but a lot of Latin terms. So what my thinking was, well, there are people out there who headbutt other people.
Yeah.
They must have a pretty good understanding of which part of the skull can absorb the most damage.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I came to be Googling how to headbutt someone.
So while you're Googling how to headbutt someone, were you thinking to yourself, this is the first piece of evidence that I do indeed have concussion?
No. I was not thinking that clearly. But let me tell you, when you Google how to headbutt someone, that opens a real Pandora's box. That's a very strange subculture. Apparently, the consensus in mixed martial arts is that you just shouldn't headbutt people. It's very, very risky. But there are dissenting voices out there. There was one guy who's like, well, I am qualified to teach people how to headbutt, and this is how to use your head as an axe.
See, that explains why you never see any English soccer hooligan mixed martial artists.
That's right, yeah, because they're all just into headbutting. Of course, this is completely foreign. Like, I've never got into a fight in my life.
I find that very easy to believe, Dr. Dave.
Yeah, because any assailant looks at me and sees my mighty arms and thinks, oh no, I'm not messing with him.
I felt with my tongue, and that came out so much weirder than I meant it to. I meant I'm a bitch. I didn't mean this wasn't a sexual thing. Let's move on. Joe Biden's presser. We talked about it at length on the show. If you're interested, go watch the show.
Or watch the presser.
Yeah,
if you've got a spare hour.
Hour 20. Did you? Yeah, it did. It felt longer, let me tell you. Do you have anything to say about it at all?
Well, no, because I
didn't watch it. So that's fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
All I would say is that for those who did watch it or have paid any attention, the big takeaway.
Yes. What's the big takeaway from Biden's 80-minute press conference?
The big unintentional takeaway is that at one point in time he was talking about HR1, the voting rights bill, and he suggested that what Republicans are doing in the States makes Jim Crow, quote, look like Jim Eagle.
I saw that quote.
And I spent a long time trying to work out, is he just raving? Has he just hit his head into a door like Dr. Dave? Or is in America Jim Eagle? Does that mean something? And so I was Googling Jim Eagle. And there is a real estate agency called Jim Eagle. But I just don't.
I'm pretty sure it was. Is that next door to Four Seasons Landscape?
Yes, a bit like that. I do think he was just raving. He was just.
Was he using eagle as a stand-in for American values?
What? repressing the vote is American.
No, but he was saying what Republicans are doing is so bad that it makes Jim Crow look like
American values. Oh, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Actually, why are we making excuses for
this? It was very
yeah, okay. Because I did see that and I thought that must be a reference to something that I don't know. But it must be
I thought the same.
Mid-Atlantic in the 1950s reference. But
while you were Googling concussion late night, I was Googling Jim Eagle late night. And I can tell you, I don't think it's a reference to anything.
I'm going to Google Jim Eagle.
You can do it as well. You can do it as well.
You keep talking.
I'll keep talking. The only thing I would say was that slightly serious is that for those who think, and those people are extremely naive, for those people who think there's any chance of any action on gun control happening in the next few weeks, you would have been what?
No.
Yeah, you would have been set at ease by this press conference because he talked about gun control for like 1 second, and then he spoke. He just tried to turn everything into infrastructure.
Right.
Like it's so obvious that the next thing is infrastructure, and he's just moving on.
Yes, yeah.
Which is a sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
For reasons I'm about to tell you when we talk about guns.
Yes.
But for those who are holding out hopes for gun control, you can give up right now after that press conference.
I mean, you probably have already given up. But Dave Weigel, one of America's most astute political reporters,
and Jim Eagle fans,
says, I feel bad for random guys named Jim Eagle who were accidentally roped into that odd Biden line. He says in brackets, I think he was trying to make a crow equals bad, eagle equals good thing land, and instead made no sense. It was an avian reference.
Maybe it was. It was very odd. I mean,
I was sort of halfway there.
This is at 4:45 in the morning.
Crow equals
very tired.
Bad, equals good. One day I'll have to tell you about how I got stalked by a murder of crows in Seattle.
Well, crows are very clever and they're very...
Yes, they were communicating with each other and they're communicating they wanted me out of their neighborhood.
I know this is going to be a short one, but I just got to tell you a very quick story about crows because they are very interesting birds.
Yes, they are.
And in Japan, I saw an animal documentary about this some time back, about crows in Japan.
Yeah.
Because they got a big Tokyo crow issue happening,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
The crows in Tokyo, apparently, and I saw footage of this happening, they pick up nuts.
Yeah.
And they drop them across the pedestrian walkways.
Right.
And only on the pedestrian walkways. And the reason for that, if you think about it, is very clever.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to want the cars to drive over them to crack them open for you, which is presumably what they do, because then they go and eat the insides. But when you drop them on pedestrian walkways, there's an off period where cars aren't going to run you over. So it's absolutely brilliant.
Very clever.
They're good, those
I can also tie crow cleverness to American politics.
Really?
In the 70s at the University of Washington in Seattle, there were a bunch of experiments done on crows because University of Washington is a major home of crow research. A lot of crows live in that area. And they were trying to figure out things about the memory of crows, but also the social transition of memory among crows. So they have researchers who are assigned with the job of being mean to the crows. And to test their memories and also their collective memories, they would do it in Nixon masks. And what they found was that years later, these crows, and like generations of crows down, had an aversion to people with Nixon masks.
Are we sure it's because of that? Not just a natural aversion to Richard Nixon?
Could have been.
They're very clever crows, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the ultimate test of crows, what they should have done, is they should have just sat the crow down and said, now, crow, the voting rights in Georgia makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. Explain it to me, crow. I think only crows are smart enough to work out what the hell Joe Biden was referring to. That'll be my test.
Get your name out of my Get my name out of your filthy mouth.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing else about the press, but on the gun control thing, I want to talk about the guns briefly. First of all, I'd like to talk about, I'd just like to mention from last week, a little adjustment, not correction, just a little adjustment.
I love Chaz's adjustment.
This is an adjustment for something you said.
So
it is an adjustment.
Okay.
Correction.
Okay, yeah. Adjust away.
You weren't the only person though. In fact, everyone did the same thing, which was off the back of.
Glad to know I'm not special.
Off the back of that A. Rupar guy from Vox, who sent out the clip of them talking about Baker, the sheriff, talking about how the guy had a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was a very selectively clipped clip. If you look at the entire press conference, which I eventually got to, remember I hadn't watched it at the time. You see that 3 answers earlier, he was saying now I'm going to tell you what this guy was saying, and he then took through, and that was part of him explaining.
I know that's what part of what he was saying. What I want to know is same thing about he had a sex addiction. He was trying to eliminate sources of temptation. Why was he ventriloquizing for this guy? Why was he, as a police officer, effectively giving this guy's statement? I mean, there's effectively a media policy now that if a mass shooter issues a political manifesto, you don't cover the political. You don't publicise the political manifesto. Why? And it wasn't the bad day thing. That wasn't the worst. It was, I've got a sex addiction. I needed to eliminate these sources of temptation. That will be, okay. That will come out in a court case, whatever. Why was that at the centre of the press conference?
Yeah, look, that's fair enough. That doesn't, and he certainly, the cop certainly has no response to that. He at the time he said, look, we don't have any information, so I'll tell you what he's saying because we didn't have no other information. And that what you're saying is that's bullshit, and that's fair enough. Yeah. But okay, well, let's leave you aside. What a lot of people were saying at the time was, oh my God, this cop's making excuses for him because he's white and all this kind of shit. The cop wasn't making excuses. The cop very clearly at the beginning of it said, I don't know how much stock we put in this, but this is what he's saying. But I understand your point. Anyway, I just want to put that out there.
On the other hand, if that had been a shooter who had been inspired by things that he'd read about ISIS on the internet and had said, the reason why I was doing this was because I was waging war on the infidels, it would not have been phrased in the same way. It just, This comes back to what I was talking about last week, where race actually does have a lot to do with it. When white militias bomb a federal building, the congressional response is we need to get the white militias in to talk about, what their feelings are, what their grievances are. Others, you don't give any space for their grievances whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to briefly just talk about the guns thing, and let's leave aside the fact it didn't come up much during the press conference. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days about background check laws and assault weapon bans and all that kind of stuff. I just want to just check off a couple of just aspects of it. The first of which is background check legislation is just simply not going to happen because Joe Manchin, who is, as I say on the show, the most important Joe in America at the moment, he has this weird sense of, he keeps on saying it's for background check laws, but what he means by that is that all commercial interests have background checks and any non-commercial interests don't. He's saying that in fact, Joe Manchin tried to pass a background check law back in 2013, which explicitly excluded non-commercial. So it means you can sell it, but just not as a business.
Right. So this is what's known as the gun show loophole.
And it's not necessarily about gun shows, but just. But this
is a third of gun sales in the United States are non-commercial interests. So it's not shops, it's not businesses. It's someone wants to sell a gun on eBay or whatever. And the gun shows were the traditional venue for this, where people could bring guns along and sell.
And Manchin supports that. So they're never going to get background checks.
It makes absolutely no sense that is exempt, but
But anyway, that's what Manchin has. How Manchin wants it.
Great.
The next thing is.
By the way, I just want to mention, West Virginia is very significant in this history. Okay, this comes back to the 2000 election. I remember going to a birthday party in West Virginia once in 2007. And these union guys, very traditional Democrats, talking about how, Democrats had lost the state, never had any hope of getting it back. And West Virginia had, I think, voted Democratic every presidential election up until 2000. They said George W. Bush came to the state 15 times with one relentless message, which is Democrats will take away your guns. The 2000 election is really underrated in terms of a realigning election. You look at the 96 and 92 elections, Clinton was winning Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, one Georgia in 1992, one Arizona in 1996. The electoral map just did not look as it does today. The 2000 election was basically where the Democrats' rural conservative vote evaporated, just completely disappeared and has never come back. And Bush's push on guns played a major role in that. And, Manchin is one of the very, very last Democrats at a national level left from that region.
Yep. I was going to say as well, I mean, the other thing is, like, people, like, obviously the background checks obviously have limitations on their uses as well, because obviously the background check only works if someone has a known red flag, which is going to be rare anyway. And the databases of background checks are awful, notoriously awful. In fact, guess who sponsored legislation to try to fix that? Ted Cruz.
Wow, okay.
That's his personal issues.
That's your Ted Cruz stopped clock right twice a day.
There you go.
Yes.
But anyway, but it's not going to happen. Assault weapon bans, I just wanted to point out, is never going to happen from now on because of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Because the Heller test says that if it's in common usage, the gun, you can't ban it.
Yes. So this is, for those of you not up on this is a Supreme Court case in 2008 that was actually the first court case to establish that the Second Amendment right to bear arms denoted an individual right to gun ownership. It was actually not a settled issue prior to that. And so this turned over DC's gun control regulations. And as Chaz says, yes, if it's a gun in common use, then...
Yeah. So even though there was an assault weapons ban as recently as a decade and a half
94 to 2000, that was part of the
2004. 2004. So even though it was there recently 17 years ago, since they got rid of it, the AR-15 sold so many.
Yes, there are more than 3 million of them in circulation now. Just AR-15s. There are more than 70 million of semi-automatics of all models.
Exactly. So none of them are going to get past the Heller test.
That's why. Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting that Biden actually mentioned that because A, it's politically impossible. Yet B, the Supreme Court would shoot it down. So what was he doing? Was that just staking out an aspirational position?
Yeah.
We're Democrats. We're in favour of gun control. Which that, by the way. Democrats are way less gun-shy on this than they used to be. And this is another one of the sort of long-run effects of realignment, especially after it was sped up by the 2000 election, is Democrats have just become so much less afraid of once taboo issues. So gun control, same-sex marriage, Black Lives Matter more recently. These used to be things that just freaked the hell out of Democrats.
And also I just want to say one other thing about the assault weapons ban theory, apart from the fact it's not going to happen, is that I think people severely overestimate how many deaths there are from assault rifles. Like in that if you look at the FBI numbers, and there's always a high number of guns that are uncategorized. So you never could be 100% sure. But usually, most years, it's between 6,000 to 8,000 murders with handguns.
Yes.
About 300 with rifles. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, there's more murders using clubs and what is it? It's something ridiculous.
Alligators.
But it's basically blunt force weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this often gets pointed out, and it's true, but I think there is something unusually, and as much as I hate to use the word terrorist, there's something very terroristic about massacres carried out with assault rifles.
And so there's a higher ratio of high death massacres that do have.
In fact, nearly all of them involve the AR-15. The other thing is that you can make arguments for possessing handguns and shotguns. I have never heard a convincing argument for why a civilian should have a semi-automatic weapon. They're not regarded by hunters as good hunting weapons. They're regarded as unsportsmanlike and they ruin the meat.
When you say weapon, you mean rifle?
Yeah.
Because basically every handgun these days is semi-automatic.
Yeah. They're not considered a good weapon for defending your home because you run the risk of killing your entire family. Shotgun is considered the weapon of choice for defending a home. Basically, they're good for if you want to go to a rifle range and have a lot of fun firing off as rapidly as you can. But there's absolutely no reason why anyone should own one.
I want to tell you a story. By the reason I'm rushing through is just because I know that we don't have a huge amount of time today, and we're going to be about to go on holiday. So I want to make sure I get stuff in because I can't do it next week. You told them. I don't mess with them. They're
we're going to be away for 2 weeks because we respect Jesus on this podcast.
What's all
so
about.
We are not going to be here for Good Friday and the week after.
But yeah, I just want to say something. With gun control, I'm about to make an actual proposal. But before that, I read a really interesting article which I'm going to put in the blurb, which you can have a look up there in the homework. It's about 2013. What happened then? And that was that, if you recall, just after the election in 2012 was when Republicans had their autopsy come back.
Yes.
And they said, we're about to get reamed by the Latinos. We need to be more tolerant.
Yes.
They obviously didn't listen to their autopsy at the time.
They did not. They went in the opposite direction.
But at that point in time, Obama's team thought to themselves, here's a window. Because that was public. So here's a window. We can get comprehensive immigration passed. And they were sounding out various Rubio types.
Yes, yeah.
And they were saying, I think we've got the numbers. If we play it smart, we've got this window for 2 or 3 months where we can get comprehensive. Now, working up comprehensive immigration, they were just about to release the bill.
Yeah.
Then Sandy Hook happened.
Right.
And Obama had a choice to make.
Yes.
And he made the choice, no, let's go for guns.
Yeah.
And they dropped immigration and went for guns. They spent 3 months building up to Joe Manchin's shitty background check bill, which didn't even get up anyway. And by then it was too late to go back to immigration.
Right.
And so the reason why we're screwed up on immigration now is because they didn't pass it then.
Yeah.
Because they went for the golden calf. I don't know, was it maybe the white whale? I don't know what the analogy is.
Gun control,
yeah. Gun control, and it just didn't pay for them.
Yeah.
And
by the way, after hearing everything that Chaz has just told you about background checks, you might be wondering why this always comes up.
It's because it polls so well.
It polls very well.
Yeah,
it always
like
polls
90%.
80 or 90%. Yeah. It's like a lot of proposals that poll, gun control in the abstract does not poll well in the US, but this is one of those proposals that always does.
Well, I'm gonna make a very quick proposal here,
okay.
And then you can say whatever you want to say about guns. Mm-hmm. And that is this thing that never comes up, unlike background checks. Never. This probably polls terribly, but this is not going to solve the problem because nothing will solve the problem because it's so intricate in terms of it's so endemic to America. But this I think would make a difference, which is fund the ATF. Which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Department, who are in charge of regulating this area. And they have no money. Yes. They have no investigations. And it's because Republicans have starved them for over the decades, right? In 2018, they had fewer employees and fewer investigators than they had at the turn of the century, even though there's like 4 times as many guns in circulation as there was then. They aren't allowed to inspect a shop more than once a year. So every time a shop's inspected, they then know they can do whatever the hell they like.
Yes.
They're not allowed to go undercover. They're not allowed to run stings. Get this. They are not allowed to have a centralized digital database when they search. They're not allowed to run keyword searches on the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of records they have to search through. To perform a search, they have to find a specific index number of a former dealer, then search the records chronologically for records of the exact gun that they seek, because they can't run either keyword searches, date searches, or any other field. They are legally prohibited to do so. Yeah. Right? They're not allowed to do research. They have. In 2017, there are 112,000 gun purchase denials from people who intentionally tried to buy a gun when they were banned from doing so.
Wow.
Out of those 112,000, the ATF investigated 12,000. They ended up prosecuting, guess how many?
None.
12.
Sorry, just a nice symmetry.
0.1%.
Wow.
Is what, and it's because they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
If they had, and this is something Joe Biden can unilaterally change. If they had the resources, they could then investigate more. They could kick ass a bit more.
Yeah.
They could make sure that the law is actually enforced. Like I said, this is not going to solve the problems, but I think that would actually make a difference. To be honest, I think it would make more of a difference than some of the background check legislation you see.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require Congress.
Look, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, the ATF, I wonder if Biden would be like, no, that is a cultural powder keg that I don't want to touch. The ATF is one of the most demonized agencies in the US. I'm actually surprised that it still exists. I'm surprised the Republican administration hasn't abolished it. You'll remember from previous PEPs we talked about it was the ATF that was held responsible for the Branch Davidian Waco massacre, which was an absolutely horrific event, a horrific instance of just complete violent mismanagement of a situation by a government agency, which resulted in the deaths of 76 members of this religious sect that just did not need to happen. That became this real sort of right-wing touchstone about government power is not only bad, but is coming for us, is coming for religious freedom, is coming for our guns. This was one of the things that motivated Timothy McVeigh to blow up the alcohol, tobacco, firearms building in Oklahoma City in 1995. And as I've already mentioned once on this podcast, this episode, the Republican response was, we need to get militia groups in to talk about their grievances. Yes. So I do wonder if Biden would be a bit gun-shy about...
Well, that's good.
About, in this environment where we've just had the debris is still being swept up at the Capitol building, where we're bringing the ATF back, baby. We're giving them more power, more funding. I think they absolutely should give the ATF more power and more funding, but I do wonder whether Biden's sort of instincts would not allow him to do that.
Quite possibly. Do you have anything else to say about guns?
No, I don't.
Okay. We're racing along.
Stats Nuggets!
Stats Nuggets! Stats Nuggets as I can.
Okay.
There's going to be heaps of them.
Have we got a 6-pack of Stats Nuggets? A 9-pack? A 20-pack?
Let's see how we go. I've got a lot here. PRRI poll this week.
Yes.
For the first time ever, majority of Republican voters support same-sex marriage.
Wow.
51%.
That's good.
So there you go.
That's a Stats Nugget that deserves a sweet mustard dipping sauce, I think.
And then overall, not just Republicans, overall is now up to 67%.
Yes.
Overall, which is up from 61% in 2017 and so forth. Democrats 76%, Independents 72%.
Yep.
So there you go.
Which,
nice.
Going back to something I said earlier, when you consider how terrified Democrats were of this issue in the 90s and 2000s, look at it now.
Things have changed.
This is why you get such violent resistance to cultural change when it's in its early stages, because people know that once it happens, it happens.
Which is exactly why we got to get behind the ATF, Dave. Dave, talk to us about college sports.
Yes, okay. So, March Madness is in progress at the moment. For those of you not familiar with that, this is the annual college men's basketball tournament that I would say behind the Super Bowl is the single biggest kind of sporting event in the US. So it's an event that happens over the course of 3 weeks. This is when the 64 teams selected by the NCAA committee, it's not exactly the top 64 teams in the country because every conference has to be represented, but they're all put into this big, enormously fun tournament. So there's 4 regions that have 16 teams each, and in the first round, number 1 plays number 16, 2 plays 15, etc. Everyone's fixated on this, especially the first 2 days when you get these you always get these crazy upsets because there are so many teams in there. This year has been no exception. Oral Roberts University, which Simpson fans may recognise as Ned Flanders' alma mater, beat the highly fancied Ohio State University this week. And then they actually beat their next opponent too, whose name I can't remember. So they're down to the final 16.
You'll never forget Oral Roberts.
The Sweet 16. No, you never forget Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is a Pentecostal university founded by a Pentecostal televangelist. Oral Roberts was a real innovator when it came to televangelism. He was one of the first who would make these big fundraising appeals, which was very controversial at the time. But, you know, everyone's doing it now.
The good thing about Oral Roberts is that his porn name is his actual name. Anyway, keep going.
On a cleaner joke, I saw someone on Facebook saying that she convinced her 13-year-old daughter that Oral Roberts was in fact a dental university. Also in the NCAA tournament was Liberty University.
They still exist.
They still exist, yes. So Liberty University, founded by Jerry Falwell in Virginia, this very conservative evangelical university. You know, I think you'd probably call it Donald Trump's favourite university. He had some very significant campaign moments there. Now, it is true that the college president, Jerry Falwell Jr., did get kicked out for just being a complete, I don't even know how to describe it, just having this lecherous lifestyle.
And he was
that was captured on camera.
He was
How many more alliterations can I do?
He was lecherous, and his wife was accused of having affairs with students as well.
Basically abetting his lechery. Yeah, his wife was accused of having affairs with students. I think he was like facilitating an affair that his wife was having with a pool boy.
Yes.
Like with a literal pool boy. I don't know what role exactly he had in that, but he was making it happen.
Do you know what the name of that movie was? Where they were having sex with the pool boy? It was actually called Oral Roberts.
Okay.
Go on.
And anyway, I think that what finally brought him undone was this photo of him on a yacht with a glass of wine in his hand, which he claimed was an anonymous black liquid.
Yes.
With his pants undone, with a woman who had her pants undone.
And he said it was in sympathy for her because she was pregnant.
Yeah.
But he didn't say when she got pregnant and to who.
Yeah. Anyway, so he got kicked out and left complaining, likening himself to Martin Luther King. Anyway, but Liberty University has over the last few years developed a very good basketball program.
Okay.
Apparently, so they're in there. They got knocked out of the first round. They weren't very highly seeded. This year, I mean, it's a weird year. It was a season that was very interrupted by COVID, but for college basketball fans, at least the tournament happened. This year it didn't happen last year. From my point of view, University of Michigan is still in, which is great. It's come close a few times in the last few years. Probably won't win this time. I think there are some teams that are a lot better, but at least they're still in.
So what sport is this?
Basketball.
Okay, we never said.
Didn't I?
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You would have had to read between the lines to figure out that this was basketball.
That's why I'm here.
Okay. Well, thank you. No, this is very helpful in the learning experience. And yes, sorry to those of you who've just been incredibly confused by what I've been talking about.
It was only going to be basketball or football, so just.
But yeah, no, not football. But let's talk about both college basketball and college football, because I think the presence of these two evangelical universities in this tournament brings up something quite interesting about college sport, which is that even though colleges are sort of widely considered these liberal institutions, they're stereotyped as liberal institutions in the United States, college sport is a fundamentally conservative institution. Right, and I say this as someone who's a big fan of college sports in the US. Even though college basketball is an objectively inferior game to the NBA, it's still a hell of a lot of fun at tournament time. Don't try watching regular season college games. It's the absolute worst. No, seriously. If you love scores of like 36 to 34... and, watching a bunch of guys playing this overly vigorous, pointlessly vigorous defence, which means they're exhausted by the last 10 minutes of the game, and hearing commentators praising how hard-working they are, well, fine. But, yeah, otherwise don't watch regular season college basketball. But to get back to the broader cultural point, whereas professional leagues, especially the NBA, are increasingly becoming associated with progressive politics because of the bargaining power that players have. right? So because of the fact that in professional basketball, there's very few players on the roster. That means there's not many collective action problems standing in the way of basketball players when they want to make a point. It is the competition where players have the most power in relation to both coaches and owners. In the NFL, there's a lot more sort of conservative resistance to that kind of player activism, but nonetheless, we are seeing more and more of it, to the extent that Colin Kaepernick's protest eventually did become a thing in the NFL. Now, college sports are very different because basically the players have no power or have very, very little power. And, I'll qualify that by saying they've got more power than high school players do.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So a friend of mine who was a punter for the Oregon Ducks once explained this to me. He said the way that coaches control college players is by playing time, right?
Sure.
They can afford to, if someone's pissing them off, if someone's misbehaving, they can just cut their playing time. Right? It's quite an effective disciplinary tool. But he said at the high school level, it's way worse. He said the disciplinary tool is access to water. This friend of mine he played his high school football in Arizona, in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's like the desert.
Yeah.
And he said, like, the coaches would tell them, men don't need water, only fags need water.
What, to drink?
Yeah.
To shower?
To drink. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to get at is these power imbalances, they shrink the further up you get. Right. So by the time you get to professional sports, players have a lot more power.
They have water.
And they do have water. At the college level, they still have relatively little power. It said the central figures in college sports are the coaches. Okay, and I think this is one of the reasons why college sports are really sort of identifiably conservative in nature, because the central characters are these quite authoritarian head coach figures. And especially given that in college sports, players, by their very nature, don't stay around for very long, right? 4 years at the most. The really good players in football often only stay for 2 years. In basketball, often only 1 year before they go off to the professional leagues. The characters that stay in place are the head coaches. And so journalists, if they want any access to a program, they have to develop relations with the head coaches. And so they start to see the world through a kind of head coach point of view, which is very, very authoritarian.
Sure.
And there's often this real sort of racial subtext to this, which is that head coaches tend to be white. Not all, but in most cases, head coaches are white. Majority of their players are black. And you get this very common narrative that these wayward young black men who really need guidance in their lives, come under the firm but loving hand of this head coach who, really turns them into a man. It's a sickening, disgusting narrative, and I'm so fucking sick of it. No matter how much I love college sports. But it is one of the things that really contributes to this fundamentally conservative nature. Another thing that contributes to it is the real sort of variety of institutions in college sport. There are, in Division 1, there are, I think, 120 different universities. And that doesn't include the Harvards and Princetons of the world. Oh, no, they're all Division 3. This is the big state universities. And so in football, the major powerhouses are Alabama, Ohio State, Louisiana State, Clemson University in South Carolina, right? These are heartland places. College basketball as well, the traditional kinds of powers, University of Kentucky, University of Indiana, Michigan State University. These are all places that are away from the kinds of metropolitan centres that dominate professional sports. Now, one of the things I love about college sports is wherever you are in America, you've got a team. So you're in the middle of Idaho, you've got the Boise State Broncos. You're in Nebraska, you've got the Cornhuskers. There isn't a professional team, anywhere in sight, but you've got the Huskers. You're in Alabama, you've got a choice between the Crimson Tide or Auburn University, which used to be coached by Tommy fucking Tuberville, who has recently said he believes there are enough background checks already. But it really means that, yes, the whole country is represented, and especially since these heartland teams do so well in college sport. That's another thing that adds to this kind of conservative character of it. I'll never forget, I think it was in 2019 when the Washington Nationals won the World Series and Donald Trump turned up to a game and got booed. Washington Nationals are the Major League Baseball team. And he just got booed by the crowd. So, in order to make Mr. Trump feel better, his staff took him down to Louisiana to an LSU game held at Baton Rouge. It was LSU versus Alabama. And I remember Steve Scalise and his terrible wife were there as well. And they actually got they forced the university to put them up on the Jumbotron for like 5 minutes and to have this 5-minute long standing ovation for Mr. Trump. And I mean, during the Trump era, I think this divide between college and professional sports just got more and more stark as more and more professional teams refused to actually go to the White House after winning championships. But the college players would be, dutifully dragged along. So one of the several years where Clemson won the national championship in football, the players went, and because the government was shut down, and so the White House's in-house catering staff weren't available. Do you remember what the White House had done?
Was this the McDonald's?
McDonald's, Wendy's, Arby's, all kinds of horrific shit. These cold burgers that were being served. And I remember getting extremely annoyed by the Twitter discourse because there were all of these people on the left of Twitter took this is my one opportunity to show I'm even-handed by saying something that isn't anti-Trump. And I was saying, if I was in college, I would have thought it was cool to go to the White House to eat burgers with the president. It's like, yeah? Twitter journalists, how many fucking national championships did you win? You win a national championship, you expect better than a cold Wendy's burger, no matter whose house you're eating it at.
It sounds to me like you haven't had a Wendy's burger.
You are not even getting paid when you're a college athlete. I hadn't even gone into the whole pay issue. College athletes should absolutely be paid. But we don't have time to go into this. Anyway. I just thought, it's March Madness. We owe it to you to talk about this very important phenomenon because this has got a lot of attention.
Well, this actually links to politics, and I'll tell you how.
It always links to politics, Jez.
Well, this week it particularly linked to politics because Kirsty Noem, who is one of the cattle call of Republicans who are clearly going to run in 2024 if Trump does not. Her run may be over before it begins.
Oh, no, because, why is that? I was looking forward to Noem 2024.
Noementum. She's the governor of South Dakota, for those who don't know.
Yes,
and her selling point, there's no way I can sugarcoat this. Her selling point is the fact that she has well-chiseled arms. That's it. That's
really?
That's basically what she's.
Well,
okay.
Sympathy. That's my selling point as well.
But anyway, having said that, that's not part of this story. But I'm just giving background for people. Like when conservatives talk about her, they go, "Oh my gosh, she's got amazing arms." You go, I didn't realize that arms were such a big deal to you guys. But anyway, 2 weeks ago, she tweeted this. Good call. 2 weeks ago, she tweeted out. In South Dakota, we're celebrating International Women's Day by defending women's sports. I'm excited to sign this bill very soon. And then she had a little attachment of the bill that just passed through the South Dakota legislature.
Let me guess, it's an anti-trans bill.
You got it.
Yeah.
Anti-trans bill. Now, what this bill does is it bans transgender women. Transgender men can do whatever they like. Transgender women are banned from playing in female sports from kindergarten through to college. And it also allows for legal redress against anyone who broke this law. Okay, so they can sue.
Right.
If someone is, say, coming first if there's the leading woman and then a transgender woman comes in and beats her, she can sue under this law. Okay. And Kirsty Noem's going, yeah, this is great. I'm going to sign it. I'm very excited. Okay. Nothing happened for a few weeks. And people were starting to think, well, what happened to that bill that she was so excited to sign? It passed. Why hasn't she signed it yet? As the governor of South Dakota. And then, this week, she passed what was, I think they call it it's not a veto. It's like a tone and style veto or something. As if it's just
tone and style veto.
It's just a tiny little change you just got to make to the law. Yeah, this is what they do in South Dakota. Just a tiny little change. It's not a full veto. Just a tiny little change, and then we'll pass the law. What this tiny little change involved was excluding colleges entirely and excluding all the legal redress.
Whoa!
So that doesn't leave much.
Yes.
Right? And social conservatives were not pleased when they saw that. She held this press conference. She said, "Look, what I'm doing is I am actually making this much more effective because I've gotten legal advice that this was not going to work. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to get together with a bunch of other governors and we're going to sign a petition to stop this kind of stuff happening, and that's going to work instead." And social conservatives were somewhat nonplussed by the petition solution, right? And she's still talking tough, but she's just not signing this bill, right? And so then she goes on Tucker Carlson, who absolutely is too smart for Kirsty Noem. And this is what eventuated. This is just one part of the train wreck interview.
This bill would only allow the NCAA to bully South Dakota, and it would actually prevent women from being able to participate in collegiate sports. So what I've done is I've asked the legislature through a style and reform.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just for our viewers, I'm so sorry.
The bill.
Can you just back up for 1 sec for our viewers who haven't followed this as closely? How would this bill prevent women from playing in South Dakota, if you would?
Because what it would do is it would put a law on the books that would allow the NCAA to take punitive action against our state. And we're a small state, Tucker. We've had to fight hard to get any tournaments to come to South Dakota. When they took punitive action against us, we would have to litigate. And legal scholars that I have been consulting with for many, many months say that I would very likely lose those litigation efforts. And I don't think that
so you're saying, so hold on, just to be clear, it's not the bill. You're saying that
many times over and over again.
But wait. So you're saying the NCAA threatened you, and you don't think you can win that fight. They said if you sign this, we won't allow girls in South Dakota to play, and you don't think you can win in court, even though the public overwhelmingly supports you nationally, and so you're caving to the NCAA. I think that's what you're saying.
No, that's not right at all, Tucker. In fact, you're wrong.
No, he's right. That's exactly what she's saying. And he didn't let her go at all. 6 minutes of that, just going. So you're saying you're caving. That's what you're saying. You're saying you're caving over and over and over again. And what's come out since then is the social conservatives haven't let up on this at all, as you can might imagine. They then connected the dots. They noticed that South Dakota okayed placing transgender female prisoners in women prisons before under Kirsty Noem. They also noticed that there was an attempt to ban transgender child surgery in South Dakota last year, which disappeared. And they're going, hang on, I think Kirsty Noem might be the one who killed that. So all of a sudden, she's Mrs. Transgender in South Dakota. And the Republicans, you can't be tolerant to transgender people in the Republican primary. And you definitely can't
Even though Trump was interesting.
Yeah, I know. But what Trump doesn't do is cave. And now she's got cave written all over her. So particularly because the NCAA doesn't have a policy about transgender.
No, it doesn't. And
Idaho and Mississippi have already passed this law. They've had no issue.
It doesn't. And I mean, she was trying to tap into the widespread perception that the NCAA is some kind of liberal behemoth because it's associated with colleges. It's not. The NCAA is a deeply conservative institution. It moved notably later on so many social issues, including segregation, than most other institutions in the country. The NCAA, last time the NCAA itself caved was to Mr. Trump over the whole issue of should we have football seasons happening in the middle of the pandemic. Two conferences, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, initially said no. Within a few weeks, they were playing the shittiest football season that anybody has ever seen, and part of the reason for that was to placate the White House. Part of it was to placate their own conservative fans. So no, the NCAA, which has fought for I don't know how many decades to stop players from getting any kind of payment whatsoever, is not actually a liberal bogeyman, but of course it can always serve as one.
And then worst of all, her response to the controversy was to accuse all her critics of cancel culture.
Of course.
Anyway,
by the way,
I think she's done.
On just about any index, where does South Carolina rank in terms of COVID?
South Carolina, I haven't looked at this.
Sorry, South Dakota.
South Dakota. Oh,
Yes.
South Dakota's right at the top. Right at the top. It's been number one and number two the whole time.
It does, occasionally North Dakota bears it on some. Nome had the absolute worst responses to COVID. She was one of the. Yeah, she was one of the red state governors who was gloating at the start of the outbreak about, well, we're not New York, we're not California.
She still gloats.
Yeah.
But she gloats using raw numbers because no one lives in South Dakota.
Something like 60% of the state has COVID.
It's up there.
Has had COVID.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the few states where they've got the possibility of reaching herd immunity before the vaccine's even rolled out.
Yeah, no, she's not doing well. While we're talking loons, though, I might just race through a couple of quickies.
But can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
She still might. The one thing that could give her a bit of... Oh, no, it wouldn't be for the presidency, but the one thing that could save her career as, in another respect, is that Trump wants John Thune out.
Yeah.
He saw John Thune as a betrayer. Because John Thune didn't vote to overturn elections.
At least she's loyal to Trump, so he'll still...
Results, and Trump was talking up her as a potential senator.
Yeah, no, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Okay, just straight through a few quickies. Keep your eyes out on Ohio, because...
No, don't look at Ohio.
Oh, no. There's some real car crash primaries happening there with the Republicans.
Yeah. But the state's always... a car crash.
Yeah, well,
always a garbage fire.
Yeah, to replace Rob Portman, it's quite a step down. You've got JD Vance, who's a hillbilly elegy guy.
Of course.
You got there's one called Kat Timken who is literally referred to as Trump in high heels, and all she does is tweet. Basically, every one of her tweets is about Trump and how wonderful he is. Her sycophancy is just incredible. She was tweeting out how she should have lakes named after him and stuff. Like it's not good.
Lake Trump.
Yeah. Anyway, but the funniest one is Josh Mandel, who is very conventional, very establishment, very desperate to sell out any dignity he has to try to win the Trump vote.
Oh, fantastic.
So, for instance, this week he tweeted out. This is a classic example of what to look out for over the next 18 months. Poll. Of the various types of illegals flooding across the border, will more crimes be committed by A, Muslim terrorists, or B, Mexican gangbangers?
Wow.
That's what you have to look forward to for the next 18 months.
Classy.
The desperation. I referred to him, to Schmitty, as a hand of the God, as Hawley's Hawley. Like, he's just so desperate. So desperate. You can smell it. Anyway, I want to also mention Herschel Walker. Definitely look out for him.
Okay, another tie-in to college sports. He is one of the greatest college athletes of all time. University of Georgia in the 1980s. Incredible football player and one of the most high-profile athletes supporting Trump.
Yes, and now definitely he's won the championship for the greatest Trump sycophant.
Yeah.
And so Trump,
certainly the highest-profile African-American athlete supporting Trump.
Yeah, and so Trump now is trying to get him to run for Georgia Senate because the Reverend
Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, Raphael Warnock is up again in 2022.
Yeah.
And Herschel Walker he hasn't fully committed to it, but he's getting close.
Yeah.
And this guy I've got a profile for him up in the blurb. Have a look.
Yeah.
This guy's pretty special. I don't know how much you know about him, apart from his college football years. But in 2008,
Yes.
he was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, which I shouldn't mock, but what I am going to mock is the fact that in that same year, his ex-wife said that well, actually, this isn't mockable either, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
His ex-wife said in an interview that he put a gun to her temple, and she said it was one of his alternative personalities, saying there was somebody there that was evil. He then boasted in the subsequent years in 2015 about the fact that he used to play Russian roulette when guests came to his home.
Jesus Christ!
This guy may be running for the Senate. He's also a massive conspiracy theorist, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, and he believes that the Communist Party of China is funding the Black Lives Matter movement, which then funds the Democratic Party. And he also believes that that not only did vote fraud get Joe Biden elected, but it got Barack Obama elected as well. And he also thinks that this was a quote. This was before. This was before January 6th.
Yeah.
He was saying that he thought that Trump would overturn the election, then would, quote, bring law and order back to this country. That's the way we can get back to the country we used to be. The United States of America that believes in law and order, and you got to send people to jail that have done the bad things. So anyway, so he could be running for Georgia Senate as well. So that's something to look out for as well.
Even though you shouldn't mock mental illness, Democrats are absolutely going to hammer that in attack ads.
Of course they will.
Yeah.
He boasted about playing Russian roulette.
Like, don't let Herschel Walker play Russian roulette with the state of Georgia.
Yes. Lauren Boebert, the gun girl in the house.
Yeah.
She she literally wears a gun strapped to her thigh, when she walks around. Right? She had a real humdinger, but we haven't heard much from conspiracy theorists for a little while.
No. So for those of you who've been missing that,
I heard someone who is in very close contact with President Trump and the ins and outs of the White House under that administration talk to the owners of Epic Times. They talked to the owners of Epic Times and they said, don't change anything. You are right over the target. So anyone who tries to tell you that this is a fringe newspaper, media, don't listen to them. I mean, I have very good sources to say this is really good information. Is it 100%? I don't know, but it's really good information. And we all know that there was information that was declassified just a few days before President Trump left office. And I know someone who is involved in declassifying that, and this person is getting very tired of waiting on the DOJ to do something about it. And we will be hearing about it very, very soon. And this is my opinion. With that information that I have, I believe we will see resignations begin to take place. And I think we can take back the majority in the House and the Senate before 2022 when all of this is under.
You heard it here first. So they're actually going to take back the House and Senate before the election because so many Democrats will resign because of the declassifications they're about to return.
So for those of you who are wondering what she was talking about with the, as she pronounced it, the Epic Times.
Yes.
So the Epoch Times is this very, very fringy publication affiliated with Falun Gong. And, Falun Gong, obviously very, very anti-Beijing. They really got on the Trump train very early on because they saw Trump as this person who was going to take on their biggest enemy. And I don't know exactly what they were like before Trump, but under Trump they just became this absolute propaganda organ. And I remember, so they became notable along with One American News Network and that other one, Newsmax. Yeah, they were sort of like the newspaper version of that to the extent that they're a newspaper. So they refused ever to acknowledge that Biden won the election.
Well, apparently they've got some very exciting news coming any moment now from good sources.
I cannot wait.
Let's move on. I'm just looking at that clock. Stats Nugget! Here we go. Gallup. In 2015, Supreme Court had a -5 approval rating.
Yes.
Today,
Yeah.
the Supreme Court has a positive 4% approval rating, with the strongest support coming from Democrats.
Really?
Yes.
Is this because they refuse to entertain Trump's shenanigans during the election?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the minds of the people who are polled, but the Democrats approve of the Supreme Court 48 to 34. So I would not have guessed that.
Was not expecting that
So
one.
there you go. The
You
nuggets
need
are
to
coming.
get the least expected dipping sauce possible with that one.
I'm going to just briefly mention something that you may not be aware of. A lot of listeners may not be, but this could potentially be quite big over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mention it now. Have you heard of Marinette Miller Meeks and Rita Hart in Iowa too?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So these two people were competing for either the seat Iowa too.
This is insane. Yeah.
The Marinette Miller Meeks, the Republican, won by 6 votes.
That's an amazing name, by the way.
Yeah, MMM. And ironically, she's probably the demographic for Triple M these days. She's a 60-year-old woman. Anyway, she won by 6 votes. And Rita Hart found, she thought there were 22 votes that should have been counted, that weren't counted. Rather than going to court, she chose not to go to court.
Yeah.
She chose to go to Congress instead, but she can. It's her right.
Yes, yeah.
So she went to Congress, and the Administrative Committee is looking at the moment, the House Administrative Committee. And the problem is, we all know what's in those 22 votes.
Yes.
If they count them, the seat changes hands. The Democrats win.
Yes.
The Democrats have a majority in that committee.
Yeah.
So Democrats are left in a situation where it just looks incredibly corrupt. If they do this, right? The House has ruled in 110 cases like this in its history. Only 3 cases was the outcome upheld. They usually don't like to do this normally. Yeah. And the most disturbing thing about this is in her brief, her legal brief, because what the House committee said is, give us a legal brief and we'll come back to you on that. They're trying to postpone as much as they can to procrastinate. In her brief, she says, where necessary to effectuate the will of the voters of the 2nd Congressional District, the committee should therefore exercise its discretion to depart from Iowa law and adopt counting rules that disenfranchise the smallest possible number of voters. So essentially, she's conceded she would have lost if she'd gone to court.
Yes, yeah.
She's saying Iowa law would not have counted these. Which is a strange concession to make. And it also it raises the pressure a little bit. Now, the rumours that are going around by anonymous sources in the press are that Nancy Pelosi supports this challenge. And Nancy Pelosi is pushing for it. There's a lot of Democrats coming out publicly and dumping shit on this.
I don't like this at all. And, I mean, it will ultimately rely on a House vote.
Yes.
I think enough Democrats are going to vote against this for reasons of credibility.
Yeah.
Like, you just, after we had that spectacle of Republicans in Congress trying to overturn the election, even if this is a very, very different case, it's a terrible look.
Not only
for Democrats to overturn an election result, and it's certainly not worth it for a gain of 1 House seat. If it is a narrow margin.
Not only does it look incredibly hypocritical, and I think it is incredibly hypocritical, but on top of that, there are practical reasons as well, which is, and this is the reason I brought it up, because I don't think many people, I don't think anyone's connected this, and maybe I'm foolish to connect it, but I am anyway. At exactly the same time this is happening, in Arizona, they are debating House Bill 2720.
Right.
And I'm drawing a connection.
Yes.
Arizona House Bill 2720 would allow the House, by a majority vote, to revoke the Secretary of State's certification of presidential electors chosen by Arizona voters and to cast the state's electoral college votes for themselves.
Yes.
Essentially, the bill that they are debating right now allows the legislature in Arizona to ignore the election and choose whoever they want. Yeah. This is a scary place to be.
It is.
Where they're this close to overturning democracy.
Yes.
If the Democrats overturn this seat, I find it very difficult to believe that the Arizona Republicans would not respond in kind in a classic partisan move.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And say, well, we're going to do this then. Let's go.
Yeah.
As soon as one state does it, other states are going to start doing it. And it's the beginning of the end of a democratic election. And that sounds
No,
dramatic, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
And I think they're really playing dynamite.
It would actually be a return to the days before it was widely accepted that majority vote in each state was how elections were decided.
So I think
it would be back to state legislatures decide. Yeah.
I reckon it's scary. I just want to braise that because this might break in the next 2 years.
Pelosi needs to go. Feinstein needs to go. So I'm not just being ageist here. A lot of these people have such questionable judgment and just this reptilian decision-making process. I'm sick of it.
Dave, talk to us about the Alaska Summit.
Oh, the Alaska Summit.
Preferably quickly, given the clock.
Yes. Jesus Christ. This was an undignified spectacle. So we had Jake Sullivan as the National Security Advisor. We had Tony Blinken, musician and Secretary of State. We had Wang Yi, the Chinese Foreign Minister, and I'm blanking on Zhang something, basically the top diplomat in China. And so they have this summit. Obviously, these events is normally all smiles for the cameras. Who knows what happens behind closed doors? This kind of happened in reverse. Instead, you had Blinken, talks about China's record in Hong Kong, Tibet, Xinjiang.
This isn't a 2-minute speech.
Yes,
it's just a 2-minute introductory speech. That's all. Niceties.
Taiwan. Chinese counterpart is clearly a bit taken aback, saying this isn't a great way to be a host. Then, and I just find this a really I just don't think that this was justified in any way. Blinken invites the cameras to stay back while he has a go at China, saying, "Oh well, America may have its problems, but we've always dealt with them openly."
Well, hang on. You skipped a bit there. You've skipped a bit where the Chinese guy responded to Blinken's 2-minute speech where he was rude. He was rude in that 2-minute speech, but it was 2 minutes. Yes. And the Chinese foreign minister or whatever responded with it in his 2-minute speech.
Yes.
Spending 16 minutes going on about all the things America do that's shit. He threw out his speech and he just went for it.
Yes.
And then Blinken said, hang on, I've got to respond to this. And then they keep on
going.
Yeah.
So, it was, and I think this highlights the real problem with diplomacy at the moment, which is no one's got any traditional diplomatic skill.
Fair.
Now, according to the White House, what then happened after that was that, but then the diplomats just got down to business. It was great. There were 2 hours of. Okay, so the best case scenario about this is that. By the way, I wasn't trying to defend the Chinese delegation in this at all. It's not as if the things that Blinken was talking about aren't real issues. They are very real issues. But I think it was an important lesson in terms of the US is not going to be able to lecture other countries about this without other countries throwing America's own human rights record back in their faces. Same thing happened with Putin last week when Biden rather undiplomatically called Putin a cold-blooded killer with no soul.
And then Putin challenged him to a debate live on TV.
Yeah. And then Putin went all the way back to slavery and the atomic bomb. It's Americans sometimes do fail to understand that the rest of the world doesn't see them as an entirely benevolent force. Yeah. Right, and they're going to couple a lot of this. Now, so all of these are legitimate concerns. Yes, the Chinese counterpart responded in kind. I didn't realise that he had gone before Blinken.
Yeah, it was supposed to be just 2 minutes each. And so Blinken used his 2 minutes to take his stabs. Then the Chinese guy decided to use 16 minutes.
Yes. But anyway, and they're all doing it in front of the cameras. But this is a real problem in that performance for the media has become such a major part of diplomacy, which, you know, traditionally diplomats were supposed to be kind of insulated from that stuff. Now, we are never going to go back to that world because technology has changed so much. Diplomats no longer have the kinds of control over information and control over the image of everything that they used to have. That is just reality. We'll never go back to that. But we are in this situation now where you clearly have both sets of delegates performing for a domestic audience. And that's, you know, Biden does not want to be seen as soft on China. Just after there's been this transition in the US, China certainly doesn't want to be seen to be, you know, opening up new opportunities for America to make incursions. And, okay, so maybe they were just posturing for their domestic audiences so that they could get that out of the way and then get down to it. But there's only so much of that you can actually do before your domestic audience starts expecting you to actually do things. Yeah, and I do, you know, when Trump escalated things with China, that was one of the most popular things that he did. He had support from congressional Democrats for that, even when it wasn't yielding any kind of results.
Would you say that's one of his greatest legacies? Like if I read you a statement, the Biden administration is making China a priority.
It's certainly,
and rightly so.
Yeah.
One of Mr. Trump's greatest legacies will be changing the world's view of China's behaviour. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that this is one of the biggest areas of continuity.
Okay, because that's Jared Kushner.
Yeah, of course.
Jared Kushner, who wrote an article complimenting the Biden foreign policy, and I don't think.
The Biden administration did not appreciate that. But yeah, so and Biden is not in a hurry to de-escalate it. Right, so his view seems to be, you know, we can milk this a bit, that China's going to be desperate to get back to normal and, you know, we can extract concessions from. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think you're right that they're responding to the public as well. Like every poll, like I've got a poll here. Gallup, 63% of Americans now see China's economic power as a critical threat, up from 40% in 2018 and 46% in 2019. That's 81% Republicans, 59% Independents, 56% Democrats. Yeah. So, yeah, it's right across the board.
Yeah, no, and, you know, once again, not to downplay the awfulness of, of many aspects of the way that Xi Jinping in particular has, he's made China a lot more authoritarian, really severely changing the situation in Hong Kong. The internal situation in China is getting worse. The situation with the Uyghurs is absolutely terrible. We don't really know how terrible because there's no way of looking at it. All of these things are serious issues, but no one has anything to gain from a situation where the entirety of US-China relations are just seen through the lens of conflict. That is not going to do anything to help the situation in China. It's going to increase nationalism with violent consequences on both sides. And at the moment, Biden and Blinken don't seem to have a way out of this escalation that's taking place.
I'm sorry, just keep on barreling along. I'm just. Do you have to go on the dot?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's. I've got way too much here, so I'm just going to just take random stuff. I'm not going to try and link it in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to take.
We've reached the random section of the podcast.
Okay. First thing is Biden just got his final department head confirmed. Yes. He's the first president to have all their department heads confirmed since Ronald Reagan, because OMB is not a department head. So Newtown doesn't count. First one to have all their department heads confirmed since Ronald Reagan. So
wow.
I did not expect that, but there you go.
No.
With the
New era of bipartisanship.
Next thing, with COVID, there's just a complete random observation.
Yes.
I don't know if it's true or not. Something to watch for the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've noticed is the deaths keep on going down.
Yes.
The cases do not.
The cases have flatlined.
Yeah, in fact, they're going up a little bit, the cases. And this is my theory.
Yeah.
My theory is that, and I'm not the only one who said this, but this has become my unified theory, is that what we're seeing is we're seeing the vaccinations kicking into the old people. Because it's like 70% of old people being vaccinated now.
Yeah.
They're the ones who die.
Yes.
Okay, and so that's why the deaths are going down.
Right.
But at the same time, apart from the rest of the community, there's kind of a race going on where one part of the community is getting vaccinated and the other part of the community is catching the variants, which are more contagious.
Right.
And so they're kind of, at the moment, they're balancing out because the vaccinations are accelerating.
Yes, yeah.
But it's basically a close run thing, and it will be for a while. And now, last week I was talking about how I was expecting COVID to stop being a thing by May. I stand by that. But I think that I was talking about deaths as much as anything. And I would expect the cases to be, I don't know, maybe 10,000, 15,000 in May, and it'll be a non-event because it'll be close to single, maybe double figures deaths. I think at that point in time. So, but that's something to watch out over the next few weeks. If this trend continues, deaths going down, cases staying the same.
We will be back next on April 16th, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like by then.
I wanted to also just note. Oh, geez, so much. Really important. I've got a lot to say about immigration, but I'm not going to say this now. I did say it on the show. I did say some stuff on the show. You can go and watch on the show. I spent forever talking about immigration because it's so poorly reported, and it's actually, anyway. I'm saying like Joe Biden doing my anyways. The big thing, I mentioned this on the show. I'm going to mention it here. This is the big thing over the next few weeks to look out for.
Yes.
Biden is desperately trying to bribe Mexico with AstraZeneca vaccines. Right? Because Mexico is one of the worst countries in the world at the moment for COVID.
Yeah.
They have 10 million doses of AstraZeneca sitting around at the moment in America. They don't need it.
Hang on, isn't AstraZeneca the dodgy one?
Yeah, but it still works. It's just not as loved as Pfizer and Moderna. It still works.
Right, yeah.
It's still got 76% efficacy. And Mexico can do with it, right?
Yeah.
They've already given Mexico 2.5 million doses. So just donated. It's not a deal. No, they promised us it's not a deal. At the same time as they donated that, Mexico closed down the southern border, and they lifted up the National Guard presence down there and were targeting people smugglers. Just a coincidence. All happened on the same day.
This is almost Trump-like.
It is. It's very Trump-like.
Yeah.
And this is the big one. The big one is, remember I was talking about, I mentioned last week and I was going to mention more this week, the thing to really look out for is the families. Because there's only so many 6-year-old kids you can send 1,000 miles to walk. But the big thing was families, unlimited numbers of families can come with 6-year-old kids, right? When the parents are taking them and all the rest of it. The Biden administration had to accept them because Mexico was not taking them, because Mexico just passed this law where they weren't taking anyone under the age of 7, just not taking.
They weren't taking any new kids.
Yes,
step by step. That one's for Rick Lewin.
I would love to play more on that turf, but I'm just barreling along.
Yeah.
And so that was a big problem for Biden because all the families all of a sudden had young kids, right? And I mentioned on the show this week they dropped down to 13% rejected families from like originally it was like 80 to 90%, right? Because they're all young, they're all coming.
Yes.
If Mexico, and they're talking about doing this, if Mexico basically puts a pause on their law, so they start taking those families from America, that will do Joe Biden so many favors, and that will solve a massive problem for him. It will almost solve the entire immigration issue for him.
Wow.
Because that's where what in the next 2-3 months they're all going to be families. And if he can just palm them off to Mexico, he's basically become Trump then.
Yes.
Which is not very nice. But in terms of his political headache, he will have solved it.
Yes.
And so that is something that's, over the next couple of weeks, is going to be, I think, the big factor.
All right.
If they can make that deal, then if Biden can throw another 5 million vaccines at them and make that deal, then Biden is home free. If they don't, then he's going to have double, maybe 3 times the number of apprehensions, and it's going to go absolute clusterfuck city on the border.
All right, Peppers. Well, now you know what to look out for the next 3 weeks. Another thing I'd keep an eye on is Congress's debate over authorisation of the use of military force, which I did want to talk about today, but we don't have time. So we will see you in mid-April.
We will see you then, guys. Can you get peppy without us? Try. Yeah, I think we can. See you guys.
Bye.